Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Is my mic working? What is working? Anything. Hello. It's working. All right. Sorry, I have no idea. Hey Zoe, hey Steve, how are you? Um, this is a good trial run to see if it works for on YouTube. Because eventually we do want to go live. Sorry that it's 15 minutes after and we're still just didn't even get started yet. Um, I'll obviously post this on Facebook. I tried very, very hard. My wife could attest. I was starting to a lot of the peace and grace that I am going to be talking about. Mark Zuckerberg was not getting that from me just moments ago as I tried to make it work on Facebook. I'll have to investigate that more. I don't know if it's like a weird thing with a firewall or if Facebook is just being wonky. I really don't know. But we're here and I have a good talk, I think. So I was gonna say we'll let people give them some time to wander in, but it's already been 15 minutes past the start of church. So um wait, maybe if I move my camera, there we go. This way I could see myself and sort of be looking at the camera. Um thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. Um so Jay was originally planning to give the talk today, um, especially because it's Easter. But he's in Missouri, like meeting with his dad, so that's really big. And so, in essence, he's not here because he's out living what he talks about in Revolution, which is really cool. Kind of like practicing what he. Oh, hey. Oh, excellent. Um, Practicing what he preaches out in Missouri, and so I think originally maybe he was going to meet up with his dad on like Saturday, but then when it got pushed till today, he told me. And Easter is very important, but also kind of like metaphorically trying to make amends with his dad. Jay is also living out like an Easter story. He flew out there on Good Friday, and so I just didn't want him to have to worry about this, which probably also leads to why I was having like a meltdown on trying to connect to Facebook when it wasn't working. Like I said, this will be our preferred way to go eventually. I just was not going to roll it out without Jay being the first to do it. But any port in a storm, right? If your sword breaks, grab your dagger. So, all right. So, um, now I've given a few talks to everybody to Revolution, and so this is fun and exciting to me. But to me, having to do like an Easter service, that's like getting called to like the big leagues. But also more so than that, it's like imagine if you're like a minor league baseball player and you get called in to your first major league game or something like that, and it's like the World Series or something. It's like this is a bigger event than just talking on a normal Sunday. So I was very conflicted because as Jay is very open with his mental health, I will be too. And I have been struggling as of recently, just like pretty down in the dumps. And it's not anything specific because specific things are easier to deal with, but it's just kind of like the world at large gets me down. And I've been working on it. But I wanted to give like an uplifting and encouraging talk because it's Easter, and Easter is like my favorite day of the year. So I do take it very seriously. And so I wanted a talk that also fits with Revolution, because Revolution is a gathering of people of different faiths. Some people don't believe at all. Some people believe very much. We have pastors, we have Wiccans, we have like you name it. Revolution has them, and so I wanted a an Easter message that was gonna fit all of that. So that's already a pretty big ask. And then on top of my the mental health issues that I was going through, because when I get down in the dumps and like into like kind of like a manic spell, I get what could only be described as nihilistic, in which I'm just like, nothing matters, like nothing we do matters, it doesn't mean anything. And that's not the message that I want to give everybody. Like, oh, hey, it's Easter. Everything's miserable and nothing matters. So I wanted to give a talk that also I could benefit from too. So, give a talk to me that's as much to me as it is to everybody else. An important thing about Easter is that the teaching, whether or not people believe in any literal aspect of the Bible, some people it's just a great book of wisdom. Some people it is exactly what it says it is. But regardless, a great part of Easter is that it shows that Jesus's teachings didn't die when he died, regardless of if we believe in a physical resurrection or metaphorical, because it almost did die when he died, right? Because the disciples kind of have um like a crisis of faith, because they were believing this guy to be the Messiah, and then from their point of view they just watch him die, and they don't know what to do. So they just go back to living their normal life. They don't continue what they're doing. And then um and so it's kind of just like they put all their hopes in this man who then they just watched die and buried. They didn't even watch him die and get buried. They kind of bailed on him, right? So but my favorite story in the Bible comes after the resurrection, in which all the disciples are going back to their lifestyle, and then Jesus shows up on the shore, and Peter gets so excited that he bails on his boat, he ditches everything, he's naked as the day he was born, and he swims to shore because he's so excited to see Jesus. And in that conversation, Jesus gives him three opportunities to tell him that he loves him, to kind of like undo the three times he denied him. So um but that's what I want to kind of focus on, is like, no, that the teachings of Jesus didn't die. Like, let's keep it going. And that gave the disciples the new life to then go out. And that's why we have all the letters and the books of Acts and everything. um so the the problem, like I was saying, with my nihilistic tendencies when I get depressed, is that I don't think anything really tends to matter. um it doesn't seem like our character or the things that we do in our lives make a difference. Because people see what they want to see, or they're like blinded by their projections onto to other people, and that is something that we all are victim to. But in preparing this talk, I also realized that that's as old as time itself, because Jesus um is saying that John the Baptist, he didn't eat that much, he didn't drink that much, he was, fasting, he was in the wilderness, he was doing his work. And then people saw that and like, oh, he's a demon, he's possessed because he doesn't eat and he doesn't drink, so clearly he's a demon. And then so Jesus says, so when I came around, I ate with people, I drank with people, and what did they say about me? They said that I'm a glutton, that I hang out with sinners, that I drink too much wine and I'm a drunkard. So really, it doesn't matter, not in a nihilistic sense, but it doesn't matter what we do, because people will see what they want to see, right? And there's a saying that I love, and I saw it in a movie, but it was weird. The movie was Birdman. I don't know if anyone saw that. It's a weird movie. I love it, but in one scene, it takes place in a dressing room, and then on the corner of the screen, in the actor's mirror, he has a little written note, and it says, "The thing is the thing. It is not what is said of the thing." And so that's kind of what I have to remember is that the thing is the thing. It's not what people say about it. It's not what they project about it. So they could say John the Baptist is possessed by demons because he doesn't eat, or that Jesus is a drunkard alcoholic because he drinks wine with his friends. Just because they're saying that, it doesn't change the fact. It doesn't change the truth because the thing is the thing. And in that same story, Jesus, and this is something we'll kind of be focusing on in the talk too, is that Jesus is almost like it doesn't matter because wisdom wins out. They could think what they want, but wisdom is what wins out. I'm making my smart decision to drink carbonated beverages as I give a talk. So, um, one thing that was plaguing my mental health a bit as of recently, and I have family members watching, so they could attest to this. And no details need to be given, except for there was some drama surrounding my family and their friends and friends of family, and I kind of was in to try to be a mediator and everything, but the truth of the matter remained is that a lot of the drama and like hurt and betrayal that happened could have been navigated and avoided if people involved would have just looked inwards at themselves rather than blaming other people. And if they didn't form almost like an echo chamber of like-minded opinions, that just amplified and made things worse. And you know, this again is nothing new. It happens with Aaron when they make the golden calf, right? The Moses disappears for like 2 months or so, a month and a half, 2 months up Mount Sinai, and he's talking to God as, like the Bible says, as a friend. Borderline face to face. And then the Israelites get very like, where's Moses? He led us here. What are we to do? Let's make a god that we could see physically. Excuse me. And they have Aaron collect all the jewelry and gold, and they make a golden calf. Now when Moses comes down, he goes to Aaron. He's like, "What did you do when I was gone? What is happening?" And then Aaron goes, basically, he's like, "Well, you know how they get, how they get hard to lead, and you know this, like it's." And he's blaming all them as if he himself didn't like make the calf, and that is something that Paul kind of touches about in Galatians in chapter 6 is he wants us to hold each other accountable, but gently. But he warns in doing so to not fall into that echo chamber that you're trying to help people with. So that is a temptation and reality that happens when we try to make things better. We get sucked in so much so that, how many thousands of years after Aaron, um, Paul writes about that in Galatians. And so by looking inward is that's how we first learn to show we learn about grace and how to show other people grace because it's been shown to us, right? The Bible says for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So all of us are flawed people who will make mistakes, but we are shown grace and mercy, and in turn we should show that to others. And Jesus tells us this in a parable about debt forgiveness. Like he uses literal money debt as a metaphor for this. And so the parable is about a king who is owed a debt of 10,000 talents. So we're going to put on our thinking caps a little bit because my wife had to help me do the math a little bit with this. So he's owed 10,000 talents by a worker. Now, one talent is 15 years worth of wages, according to a um, a reference Bible that I have. So one talent is 15 years of wages, and he is owed 10,000 talents. So that's about the equivalent of over $821 million. It's not like there's no conversion rate. It's just what their money is. It's worth over 821 million denarii. And so he forgives the man this. And now the man who was forgiven is owed a debt by someone else of a few hundred denarii. Now, a denarii is 1 day's worth of wages. So he's technically not even owed one talent. So he was forgiven 10,000 talents, and then he's going after somebody for less than one talent. And so Jesus uses that to show like this man was forgiven of this great massive debt, and then he could not even bring it upon himself to recognize the grace he was given and to show others that same grace. Um, and so grace is huge with revolution, right? Galatians teaches us about grace, and Jesus teaches us about grace, and that's kind of the foundation of revolution gathering. And I agree with all that revolution stands for and all of what Jay teaches. But the question that I've been having recently is I am wondering if it is possible for us to show grace in our lives when something happens to us because we are so emotionally involved. And so that's why I think that almost it's like almost a leapfrogging of faith in which we take turns leaning on each other. And maybe that's why, when Jesus describes a church, it's not the multitudes, it's not hundreds of people, it's not thousands of people. He goes, where at least two or more are gathered. So two is significant because maybe he recognizes that like we need to show grace to each other, but like if you need someone else to help you. And what I mean by that is, for example, that family drama that I was talking about, I was able to step outside of it as much as I could and help other family members navigate it, try to show the grace and, don't lose yourself in going low, stay who you are. But then outside of that, I was dealing with the same thing. And I was going on these rants and I was so angry and anxious. And then it was my wife that had to do the same to me and be like, I understand you're upset, but if you keep going like this, you're kind of falling into the same traps that you're upset about with other people, or like with the other group that's doing it. So I needed her to keep me focused on grace because I couldn't see it because I was so emotionally involved. And then my family was having trouble seeing grace because they were so emotionally involved. So you see how we're using each other to be able to live this out because if we try to do it on our own, we get very blinded by our emotions. And so it's definitely a community aspect to it. To keep each other straight and narrow and not fall into the echo chambers and make things worse. And I heard this funny story, not funny, haha, but funny, like, oh, interesting, about Dalmatians. And there was a filmmaker that was trying to make a movie, and there's a bunch of ongoing jokes with a Dalmatian. And in one of them, the Dalmatian has to go out in the rain and do some antics, and they could not get the Dalmatian into the rain and they couldn't figure out what it was. And then they learned that through their breeding that Dalmatians were taught to avoid water. And so in doing so, back in the day before electricity and cars and everything, the fire stations, they were all drawn by coaches, and so they would have a Dalmatian leading the coach, and the Dalmatian would be dodging puddles and ditches and things that would damage the coach. And because of their white fur, they were able to be spotted at nighttime. And so it's kind of like, where two or more are gathered and that leapfrogging of grace, that we're almost called to be like Dalmatians for each other. So when my family was lost in this turmoil, I was trying to be the Dalmatian to them, be like, no, all right, avoid this trap, avoid this. And then when I was done with that, I was starting to get blinded by my emotions. And then my wife was the Dalmatian for me, like, no, avoid this, avoid this. You could do this and stay on this path. And so in doing that, that's kind of how we learn to live grace, even if we can't live it in our lives because of our emotions. We could help others who will then help us, and in doing so, it helps us avoid the pitfalls of like legalism, that we sometimes fall into with the Bible and Christianity, because by the time Christianity has filtered down to us, it's not very much like what it is in the Bible, because things change over time and interpretations, and then we're learning it from the guy who learned it from the guy who the guy, and so so many other things make its way into what we know as Christianity, and a lot of that is um stems from legalism that happens by the Bible means this, and if you think it means anything else than this, then you're wrong. And so that's kind of what I want this Easter message to also be, is to focus on the fact that Jesus like pulled together more tables and made room at more tables than he ever flipped, right? He flipped tables when he was upset at the market, but his whole life was like pulling chairs up to the table and pulling tables together for people to of all walks of life. You have your zealots that want to kill Rome, and then you have the tax collectors that are doing Rome's bidding, and so the zealots want to kill the tax collectors. And Jesus is like, guys, we're all friends, we're all family. This is what we're doing. Pull up a chair, and that's something that goes back to the days of Elisha with sh, not the. So there was Elijah, and then his predecessor was Elisha. And so Elisha, they had a defeated army, and everyone's like, "Should we kill them?" And Elijah's like, "No, they're defeated. Let's get them together, and we'll have a big meal, and we'll we'll eat as friends." And so that's a something that kind of should be focused on more than Jesus flipping tables because he was upset. Um, and so I know normally I can get a little out there with my bonehead theology type ideas, and I'm not going to go down that path, but I will explain how Elijah and Elisha got into the mix of my Easter message. Is um so my dad passed away in November of 2020, and when that happened, you find yourself believing things that you didn't always like maybe believe in. It's like so my dad loved birds of prey. He loved hawks, he loved falcons. And so now when I see like a hawk, I don't go like, "Oh, that makes me think of my dad." Like my first instinct is like, "Oh, hey dad." Like, and it might just be a thought, but it just made me kind of think of like investigating, for lack of a better word, reincarnation. Um but in doing so, what I was like, is reincarnation, besides being like born again, as Jesus says, which we take as a metaphor, right, for being born again, but is it in the Bible anywhere else? And then I learned of Jesus is talking to the disciples, and the disciples were like, "Oh, if you are the Son of Man, isn't Elijah supposed to come? Elijah with the J, supposed to come before you come to kind of announce your way?" And Jesus says he did come. He is here, and nobody recognized him. And then the Bible says that in that moment, the disciples realized that Jesus was talking about John the Baptist. Now, it could just be metaphor, right? It could be no, he's, John the Baptist is in the same vein as Elijah. Or it could be like, no, Elijah was here. You guys just didn't recognize him, but that's Elijah. Who you're calling John the Baptist is Elijah. Now, I don't have any, I'm just explaining like where my mind went to send me back to the Old Testament, because normally I am talking about Paul and Jesus in the New Testament. So now that's how I got back to the Old Testament. And I'll always have a soft spot for Elijah because even though I think it's was it Jeremiah's called the weeping prophet, right? Because he's like always crying, but Elijah, he'll do these great works and then he'll be cripplingly depressed like in the next chapter. And there's nothing more like I get it. I get this guy. He'll do these great miracles and then just almost like pray for death because he's so sad and depressed in the wilderness. And so I have a soft spot for him, and he's also just really cool. And so I um so in going back to Elijah and Moses and Elisha, I'm starting to see like seeds being planted in the Old Testament about how Jesus is going to come to fulfill the law, not to undo it, but to fulfill it. And there's a great scene with Moses where the Israelites come to a body of water and they're so thirsty, but they can't drink the water because it's very bitter. So I'm assuming it's salt water, and they can't drink from it. And so so Moses takes a tree and puts it in the water, and then the water becomes fresh. And so when we talk, John talks about Jesus as living water, and so it's like and there's the imagery of the tree and crucifixion and something bitter that was not life-giving changing over to something that is life-giving. And so that's very much the law, how the law was, as Peter says in the book of Acts, like it was oppressive for our ancestors as it is for us now. It's an impossible standard. And um so that is like bitter water, that is like you can't live off of this. But then with the tree and the crucifixion, and now we have living water that we can learn from and get grace and mercy and understanding. And even better than that imagery is when Elijah with a J goes to find his predecessor, which is Elijah with a Elisha with a S. Elijah's working on his farm, right? He's like plowing fields and everything. And then when Elijah finds him, he's like, "All right, I'm going to say bye to my family. I'm going to eat some food, and then we're going to set out. I'm with you all the way." And then it said that he took the yoke off of his ox and broke it up for firewood. And I was like, that is such a great uh, image of what Jesus does by freeing us from the law. As he takes that yoke, breaks things like it's firewood. You don't, it's not needed anymore for what it's intended. It's kind of like a version of turning a sword into a gardening tool. So, and so with those imageries, we see that the stage is being set for grace and mercy before the law is even set into place. So with the whole um, Moses turning the water drinkable and livable, that's a metaphor and imagery of how Jesus will free us from the law. And that starts to happen before Moses even gets the law. So it's like mind blowing. It's really cool stuff. Um, but in order, a key thing for us to show people grace and mercy and understanding is we have to recognize in them the same humanity that we see in ourselves and that we wish others saw in us. Like, come on, I'm human just like you. But that's what how we have to look at it also. And Jesus tells this great parable of he's of a man who goes to well, a guest, it doesn't have to be a man. A guest goes to a wedding and instinctively sits in like the most important spot. And Jesus is kind of like, don't do that because someone more important than you is going to get there and it's going to be embarrassing for you when the host asks you to move because you took the seat of someone that's more important. And um and so he says to almost like humble ourselves, right? Like to um don't sit in the most important seat, because if you are more important than where you are, the host will ask you to move, and then people will see like, oh, this guy's he's more important than we thought he was. The host is it's kind of like moving him up in priority. And so um when the Bible, when Jesus tells us to love others as we love ourselves and to treat others how we want to be treated, it's important to note that the other might not actually be like an enemy or another. It's going back to Moses. Moses had more trouble with the Israelites that he freed than he ever had with Egypt. But when we think of Moses' struggles, we think of escaping Egypt. But he did that, and then he had to deal with the Israelites in the desert who were wandering, and they were hungry and tired, and they were angry, and if he disappeared, then they were making false gods. And even at the start of Moses' life, he sees an Egyptian beating up a Hebrew man, so he kills the Egyptian to save the Hebrew man. And the very next day, like, he sees two Hebrew men fighting, and he's like, guys, come on, don't fight. And they're like, oh, you're a murderer, we saw you kill that guy. And they like rat him out to the king, and the king's trying to kill Moses, so Moses flees. And so it's like, oh, his struggle wasn't with Egypt, it was of his own, like, the people that he freed. So for lack of a better word, like his own kind. Like, so sometimes our own kind is our other or our enemy. Our family, our friends, our political parties, and people that have the same religious views as us. They shouldn't be seen as like immune to um I don't know how to explain it, but like sometimes they are others that we need to show grace and mercy to, even though it seems like, no, our other is on the other side of the aisle. But it's like, no, sometimes like the calls coming from inside the house, like sometimes we need to deal with th- the people that are around us, because they could give us just as much grief. And by recognizing that everybody's human and flawed, and they have humanity just like we have humanity, um we also kind of learn that there is no one way to encompass everybody. Paul does this in one of my favorite sayings, where he says he becomes all things to all people. And that's something that I've tried to live my life by, and the best I can. And so we see that when he'll talk to people that are praying to all sorts of different gods, and then they'll have a god called the unknown god. And so he meets them where they are, and they go, oh, I know you have him as the unknown god, but I'll tell you who this unknown god is. And Paul eats meat, but if he's around someone that doesn't eat meat and is offended by it, then he doesn't eat meat. And so we have to learn that there's not one way to deal with everything. If the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything around you looks like a nail. There was a time where Moses was asked to do the same exact thing twice, and he handled it the same way. And that's kind of why he wasn't able to go into the promised land, which we'll get into later. But at one point he was asked to get water from a rock. And the first time he takes his staff, and God tells him to smack the rock and water will come out. And it does. And then the second time he needs to do that, God says, "Well, go to the rock, speak to it, and tell it to yield water, and it will." And Moses ignores that, and then he goes back to, "No, this is how it worked before. This is how it's going to work again." And he's like hitting it to try to get water, and it's like, no, it's not this. Even though the problem might look the same, it's not always the same solution that you have to use. Everybody's different, so we have to become all things to all people, and we have to um, allow others and ourselves to fail, and to be human. Samuel Beckett has a quote that I like live my life by, and it's fail again, fail better. And it's just because life is not a destination, it's a journey, right? It's an ongoing thing. And that is something that we learn from Moses and how he's not allowed into the promised land because to him, that was his destination. Like my whole life is getting to this promised land, and then kind of in like a really crummy realization, like God tells him by not allowing him into the promised land, like, no, your life is was everything in between. It wasn't this destination, you that you were working for and thinking that, no, once I get here, then that's all that matters. It's like, no, it was everything in between. You're not allowed even in there. So your whole life was everything in the middle. And there's like a great poem. I don't know who really wrote it, but it's like on a tombstone you have the year of the birth and the year of the death, and then there's just a dash, but their whole life is lived in that dash. The it's a journey, not a destination. And also it's harder for us to show people grace and mercy if we focus on the destination, because if we're focused on we have to get to this destination, then we could almost justify like doing bad things and horrible things, almost like, no, the ends, the literal ends, the destination justifies all the means to get there. But if we take that out of the picture, we kind of see like, oh no, life is a big journey of everybody failing and failing better and failing again and trying to be a Dalmatian to each other and help lead along the way and return the favor. Um, because the demanding for people to be perfect and not fail is kind of this where cancel culture stems from, is that we need um it's like the fruit that cancel culture breeds is like, no, we you need to be perfect, you need to be a perfect your entire life, otherwise you don't get a future, and your whole like work and everything you've done is gone, and it will bleed down to your kids and your grandkids. And that's why Jay has nieces and nephews and kids that are dealing with the issues of his parents getting canceled, and it's just this like generational curse. Um and so that's what happens if we don't allow people to be human and fail again and fail better. And Jesus um tells this parable that I don't think I've ever heard before, or if I did, is in the deep recesses of my mind. And it's about a useless tree, and this owner has a tree that hasn't bore fruit for 3 years. And so he tells the servant, like, this tree is useless, like cut it down, and we'll be done with it because it's not bearing the fruit that I want it to bear. And the groundskeeper's like, no, let's just give it another year, and I'll dig it up, I'll rework it with fertilizer, and if then we'll see what it could yield going forward. Let's not cut it down just yet. And so that's a very good metaphor for like cancel culture or any of that stuff, is that you can't cut somebody down because you don't know what their story will be. If Jay got canceled, you know, 10, 15 years ago, he would not never be the ally that he is, because he had to learn and grow. And also, everything's a matter of perspective, because another kind of indication of that useless tree parable that I learned is that in Leviticus, they're saying when you plant a fruit tree for 3 years, you do not pick the fruit from it, that let it fall and it rots and turns into compost, and then it makes a stronger tree. And then the fourth year you yield that harvest and you give it over to the Lord, and then the fifth year it's all yours. So what one man, if the landowner was maybe not from the Jewish faith, the tree would just be useless. But then maybe the gardener was like, no, this is what the law, this is what we're raised to do, is you don't pick the fruit, you don't eat the fruit for 3 years. We're just building a stronger, more rich soil. So let's not get rid of it yet, because it still has work to do. So I really like that. But like but failing and learning and getting better, that's our hero's journey, right? And our life is just the journey. I talked a lot about Moses and Jesus, and you know the Moses's journey is not his hero's journey is not leading the Israelites out of Egypt. His hero's journey is he's sitting with God as a friend, face to face, um, and like in all that glory. But then when there's trouble, that he has to leave that and go down back to where the trouble is and try to make things better. Like his hero journey is leaving God's presence to go deal with society, and same with Jesus. Jesus is in the garden before the crucifixion, and even though he's having a hard time because of what's coming, he's like safe in the garden and he's not alone. But then he has to leave, right? That's his hero's journey, is to leave that safe mountaintop and come down and face society and reality. And um and so if our journey is ongoing, how can we brag and say like, oh, I'm better than that person, or feel arrogant? Because just again, like Jesus said with his parable of the wedding, like, no, you're gonna brag and sit at the head of the table. Someone's gonna come in and move you back and humble you, because there's always someone more important. And then in First Kings, there's a saying, a scripture that says, "Why are you putting on armor and then bragging like the people that are taking it off?" Meaning like you're not even fight like you're not even done with the war. Like you're bragging like the people that return from war victorious, removing their armor, but you're just putting it on. Our life is ongoing. Like, how could we brag like people that are taking off the armor when we're still wearing it or putting it on? And so all of this is to say that it's okay to struggle, right? That was how I approached this, because I was really struggling with mentally and emotionally. Like, how do I gird this and really focus to give an Easter message? And it's okay to struggle, and even more so, I it's struggling with God is something that happens. Like, people think of our struggles, and they'll think maybe of like demons, or the devil's got a hold of me, the devil, all this stuff. But like in the Bible with Jesus and the disciples, when they're dealing with Satan and demons, they defeat them with words, right? They go, "Be gone, leave that man, get out of here." But when it comes to dealing with God, like Jesus is talking to God, like, please let this cup pass me by. He's sweating blood. He's so torn up and anxious that his capillaries open and blood comes out of his pores. Like, he's sweating blood. He's crying. He's feeling sick. And with Jacob, he actually wrestles with God, like a physical wrestling. So dealing with God has always been significantly harder and feels more struggles. Elijah and Jonah and Job, they'll do these things, and then instantly they're just like, God, just kill me, put me out of my misery. Like, I can't stand this. So, it's okay to struggle with God and with these lessons, because that's what the history has been. The the darkness of this is like, oh, deal with words. Like, don't feel guilty about struggling with stuff that you might be feeling towards God or the Bible or Christianity, because that is a very real struggle that we all have. And even the heroes of faith had these hard struggles. Um, and Jay gave a great talk the other day where he said he was like so years ago, he was so depressed and lost. And that's where he felt closest to Jesus, because both him and Jesus were feeling forsaken by God. And that's the first time he ever really kind of felt that closeness. Like, oh, we know what each other is going through. And that's also not out of character, because again, if we look at Moses and Elijah, when they deal with God, and God's like, I will show myself to you. But in order for you to see it, you can't see my face, because no one can see my face and live. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk past you as if I'm going to walk you by, and then you could see the glory that's trailing behind me, basically like the dust that I kick up. And that will be almost too much for you to handle, but that's what you'll be able to see. So even when we're like dealing with God and we want to be close with him and see him, it always seems like he's passing us by. But and that's where our struggle could feel, and we could feel forsaken and everything. So we shouldn't beat ourselves over that, because that's a very natural thing, and it's very you know, if Elijah and Moses and Jesus went through it, like, and they're the people that the host would have to tell us to get out of their seat. These people are supposed to sit there. Um, and then so um, so even though God looks like he's going to pass us by, we learn from the thief on the cross that he won't. We learn that like the presence and power and promises that God give, they're not for the future, they're for right now, right? Because the thief says, remember me when you're in your kingdom. And Jesus doesn't say like, you know what, when you get there eventually, I'll remember you. No, he doesn't say that. He says, you'll be there today with me in paradise, right? So it's not a promise for the future, it's a promise for now. Like God's working now in everyone's life now. And another thing that that same story tells us is that um God gives more than is asked for, right? He's the thief says, remember me. And not only does Jesus say, I'll remember you, he goes, but I'm also giving you the kingdom of heaven. Like you asked to just for a thought like that, I don't forget you, but you know what, I'm giving you paradise also. So that's really cool. And so in kind of wrapping this bad boy up, you know, the world the world gets us down, very much so, and society does. And people just seem like trash people sometimes. I had my issues with Facebook this morning, and that just reinforced that, like, I hate Facebook. Facebook is a cesspool. Like, so just things get us down, but we do have an advantage here when we come to this struggle, is because we're all here, right? Like, we all want to better ourselves and learn more about grace and how to show it to others. Like, we have something in us that, even though there's been trauma from the church and from the religion, like, where it's like inside of us, we're like, as Jay put it, like, we're haunted by God. Like, we can't just like walk away, but we're here and we're challenging ourselves. We didn't walk away. And so um we have the advantage there when things get rough, because Jesus calls for us to learn and to adjust. He calls for us to be as clever as a serpent but remain as innocent as doves, meaning like, no, it's okay to learn how people are going to act towards you and society is going to act, so that you're not caught unaware, you're not sucked into it. You're ahead of the curve, but you're remaining innocent. And he says that in Luke too. He goes, he's talking especially to farmers and shepherds and fishermen. And he's saying like, if you see the wind blowing in from the north, you know what kind of day you're going to have, and so you prepare for it. If you see clouds, at this time, there's going to be rain, so you prepare for it. So why aren't you doing that in your lives? Why aren't you using these telltale things that society and people show you and adjusting the way you do to the weather? And in the movie The Edge, which I really like, it's Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins. It's written by David Mamet. And in the beginning of the movie, um, Anthony Hopkins' wife goes, "Oh, you can ask my husband anything. He knows everything there is. Ask him and he'll know it." And they're in Alaska at a remote cabin, and the owner of the cabin takes a paddle down, and on the paddle there's a panther, and he goes, "I'll give you $5," which is a joke in itself because Anthony Hopkins is a multimillionaire in the movie. He's like, "I bet you $5 that you can't tell me what's on the other side of this paddle." And Anthony Hopkins goes, "It's a rabbit smoking a pipe." Turns the paddle around, and it's a rabbit smoking the pipe. And they go, "How would you ever know that?" And he says, "In it's a story, a metaphor for the Cree Indians, that the panther stalks its prey and it's on the prowl, but the rabbit sits unafraid smoking its pipe." And they go, "Why is the rabbit unafraid?" And Anthony Hopkins goes, "Because he's smarter than the panther." And so so that's the last imagery I wanted to share with you, because I'll just read. I wrote down an actual summary, and I will read it. So I said, so go show grace, go be a Dalmatian for others, help them see grace when they can't, and go out and fail again and fail better, and remain clever and remain innocent. And we could do this with peace and calmness, because we have the advantage, because we recognize the serpents and we think like them. We know how they think, and we can navigate this troubled society so well, because just like we read the weather and we're clever like the serpent, we know how everyone's gonna be, and we can remain innocent. And with this advantage, we could sit unafraid like the rabbit, because he knows that he's smarter than the panther. We're smarter than the bad things that are coming. And so, thank you for hanging out, and happy Easter. I'm sorry for the delay and the change of online venue. I personally like this more because I could see my audio levels so that I know it's working. Um, so everybody, go have a great Easter. If anyone I'll stay on for a few minutes. If anyone has questions or comments or pushback, hey, Steve, Trav, everybody, Zoe, happy Easter, everybody. So I will stay on the line for a little bit before I go head over to my family and play some pool. So thank you all, and again, apologies. I'll eventually pull this down and put it on Facebook as well. I have no idea. I restarted my computer. I did everything. I couldn't use another browser because it's one of those things where Chrome automatically logs me in. So I would still be here trying to guess the password if I tried another browser. So this worked out. And so again, sorry for the confusion earlier, but thank you all for coming and hanging out. So if anyone has any questions, comments, pushback, agreements, you name it, throw it in chat and we will talk. So my favorite game of pool is nine. Well, my favorite game, but I'm not good at it, is straight pool, because I love the strategy involved in it, but I am not very good. I once challenged someone to a game of 21 in straight pool, and they spotted me 11 points. And then I lost 0 to 21. He made me foul so much that I lost points. But the one that besides that I like the best is 9 ball, because with 8 ball, there's just too much clutter on the table, and I can't think, and it drives me crazy. So 9 ball's probably my favorite. And that's what they play in The Color of Money. But in The Hustler, they play straight pool. Yeah, it's the movie is The Edge, and I highly recommend it. Um David Mamet's troubling to me, because when he talks about writing, talks about the hero's journey, talks about structure, talks about the Bible, I could listen to him all day. But when he gets into other topics, it's almost insufferable. So I'm like really torn with him. So, um, hey Hillary, no worries, he'll be here. But no, but Steve, it's that movie has a lot of wisdom, and I take a lot of it from like stuff that I live actively. Like there's a great saying in that also, that what one man could do, another can do. And that's, that's a principle that's been around, so when somebody, no one could break the 4-minute mile, and then someone did, and then all of a sudden everybody started breaking it because, oh, it's not impossible, what one man could do, another can do. So it's that, about, you know, stay calm, you're smarter than the people against you. But yes, again, I was watching it yesterday. There's another great David Mamet movie that I love, called Red Belt, and it's all about the hero struggle, and it's so relatable because it's it just shows how hard it is to do the right thing and to stay true and honorable, and how like all everything's and how everything's stacked up against you. But that has some great lines of wisdom in it also. um and so the movie it's good. It's maybe like a 6 out of 10, but so that was Red Belt. I think it's 2 words, or 1 word. I don't know. But Red Belt. It's by David Mamet. Chuela Owelafor. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's the main character, and like everything he says is like gold in that what his character says. But that also has a great scene in it in which when he's weak, someone that he helped get secure and lift up kind of like smacks him into place and be like, no, like, and like it almost returns the favor of like giving strength back. So I love David Mamet, but like I said, he gets very troublesome in real life when he's not talking about plays or anything. But yeah, no, it's great. So those two were movies that I watched writing this also. And Steve, since we're talking about pool in here, with the capital P, there's trouble with the capital T that rhymes with P, which stands for pool. Now I know you folks are the right kind of parents, so I'm gonna be perfectly frank. Yeah, no, he is brilliant. Me and my wife just saw American Buffalo just last month, and so it was one of the first ones that he did. Um, and it was Sam Rockwell and Lawrence Fishburne and Darren Criss. It was incredible. And there's this venue in the city in which like you're like rows from the no matter where you sit, you're still only like maybe like 10 rows max from the stage. It's awesome. And it circles, but yeah, the Music Man, I love it. I love it. So yeah, in high school I was Nicely Johnson. So sit down your no wait, no, that was Guys and Dolls. Who was I was Buddy Hackett's character in Music Man. I forgot what his name was in it though. But no, yeah. So I was Buddy Hackett, and then I was in Guys and Dolls. I was Nicely Johnson. Um, so what's in Music Man? Shapoopy? Is that the one I sang? Shapoopy in Music Man? But yeah, so yeah, the Michael Keaton is the main character in Birdman. Birdman's a great movie. But that's where I got so that quote, "The thing is the thing, not what is said of the thing," is the name of a poem by I think William Stevens. William Stevens, I think. But nice. Yeah, Shapoopy, yep. I forgot what his name was in that though, but all right, everybody. Thank you so much. Everyone, thanks for hanging out and listening. And I hope that it was good and made sense. And you guys are great. And hopefully we'll figure out the Facebook stuff or move to here full time, which would be amazing. But so everyone, thank you for hanging out. Marcellus Washburn, yes. Thank you. He's a what? He's a Music Man. So everyone, have a great day. Have a great Easter. And I will talk to everyone later. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.